Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Tommy Joyner Radio Show, another episode of the Productized Me edition. With me today is my fellow friend and entrepreneur, Zaine Morgan. Zaine, welcome to the show.
Howdy, Tommy. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having you on, or for coming on to the show. It's a pleasure to have
No worries.
you. One of the things that I'm really excited about talking to you a little bit more on is the fact that you run a solo freelance copywriting business right now. But we've worked together in the past, and one of the things that I've helped you with before is trying to turn your business into a little bit more of a productized service. At some point, you decided that that wasn't the right fit for you. And you have some really good reasons why. So in this episode, I really want people, the big takeaways for people to be the pros and cons of running a productized service business, why you should do it, and maybe why you shouldn't as well. In Zaine's case, he's made the decision to scale back to more of a one-man operation. I think he's got some real good rationale in terms of his values and understanding like what's important for him to do right now. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So thanks again, man, for coming on.
No worries, man. So super excited to be on here. Glad to share how you've helped me out and where I'm going now.
Awesome. So let's just talk a little bit about your journey over the past couple years in terms of freelancing and entrepreneurship, and where you're at now.
Yeah, sure. So I started out 5 years ago as a digital nomad. Well, actually, probably 4 years ago, as a digital nomad in the whole e-commerce or dropshipping arena. Ended up pairing up when I first moved over to Chiang Mai with a really cool guy who ended up being business partners with. Shout out to Timothy Kimmy if you're listening. And just hit it off with that guy. I ended up doing a few dropshipping stores together and playing around with that business model for about a year and a half. And honestly, we didn't have too much success with that business model. Our last store was the only one that kind of worked, so that was like a massive relief. But after that, we're kind of tired of that business model and looking to transition into something else. And while I was basically the year and a half I was doing that dropshipping stores, the dropshipping business model, I was actually freelancing on the side on Upwork and getting little marketing gigs here and there. It was originally in like social media management, and making $20 an hour US, managing social media profiles, just very basic stuff like designing graphics and writing the most basic copy. Like I was literally just writing text. I didn't even study copy at this point. And just working for other companies, helping them create content on social media. And that was paying the bills at that point throughout the time I was doing dropshipping. And once we kind of decided to kill the dropshipping thing and exit our previous store and move on to a new experiment, I guess I just decided to go with what was working and my gut feeling of I guess what was always working and what I enjoyed more than dropshipping. So I moved into freelancing full time at that point, and I've just been
you're selling copywriting services, and I assume getting almost all your clients through Upwork.
Actually, no, this is pre-copywriting. So I was writing, but I hadn't studied copywriting in any sense, and I didn't really understand that there was an entire field about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So I was really just doing the basics, just throwing together I'd grab an image, put it in Canva and throw a cliche quote over it and post it on some client's social media account. You know what I mean? So I was doing that on Upwork, and that was going okay. And I kind of hit a point where I was like, okay, well, I'm working 40 hours a week and making $20 an hour. Like, there's no way I can scale this up. I'm not going to just keep putting on more hours and hours. So I need to find a way to make more per hour, right? So I was trying to think about how I can basically learn a higher value skill, or learn to charge more and be worth more. So that's when I really started digging into copywriting, and surprisingly also programming as well. So I was kind of looking at those two options, went to a very sketchy, kind of scammy 3-month coding programming bootcamp in Prague, and funnily enough, half the students ended up quitting between within the first month because the teaching was so bad and low quality that everyone ended up leaving and asking for a refund. So it's kind of a funny experience, but ended up loving Prague, so it got me interested in Europe. But yeah, so after the programming thing, I was like, all right, well, I also kind of learned that wasn't really, coding wasn't kind of what I wanted to do, and I was dabbling in copywriting then, and that just sucked me down this rabbit hole, and I got obsessed with copywriting, and actually surprised that I started to get success so soon. I mean, I was probably studying for about 3 months or so, 2 to 3 months, and like every day for 2 or 3 hours a day, I was practicing writing copy and just following the advice that so many other copywriting educators give and all that sort of stuff. Just go and find swipe files of these other great copywriters and write it out by hand for an hour a day or 2 hours a day or whatever, and then you just your muscle memory and stuff just soaks up that. You get their tone, you get their style and all that kind of stuff, and you start to understand the elements by just writing it out every day. And then listening to some books about the psychology behind copywriting and stuff like that. And yeah, within I think 2 months or something like that, I was started to apply for copywriting jobs, and yeah, that's all it took to get me from 25 an hour to quadrupling my income, my hourly rate to $100 an hour on my first copywriting project, which was pretty crazy. I also should probably shout out Danny Maguile's Secrets of a Six-Figure Upworker. I consider that like the most life-changing course I've ever studied. Yeah, I mean, just everything he teaches about like positioning and how to position yourself as an expert, how to command high-end rates on Upwork and stuff like that. It was a game changer for me and just completely opened my mind. Up until then, I was always like, I didn't really believe in the value of what I did, and I didn't even. It's kind of like if you don't even know people are charging these crazy high rates, you just think that everyone on the planet works for $20 an hour or something like that. You don't know this guy's charging 100, 200, 500, whatever, right? So you don't have if you don't have that goal or vision to work towards, and you don't know what's out there, it's like impossible to kind of shoot for that yourself. So that really blew my mind, and I found that like so like transformational with his course. So I definitely recommend that to anyone who's trying to freelance. And yeah, from then I've just been getting into freelancing, and yeah, I think I don't know, a year and a half went by and ended up pretty quickly scaling up to like $10,000 a month, just working part-time as a copywriter and traveling and living the good life, making good money. Ended up going to like $150 an hour is kind of like where I capped out, which is, I mean, I honestly never thought I'd make that kind of money in my life. So I was just super stoked with everything. And yeah, again, kind of hit the hourly cap, and I'm like, all right, how can I grow this again? And I kind of met Tommy and a few other people who are running productized businesses and agencies and stuff like that. So I was starting to think, okay, is it time to kind of grow this up and, grow this business and take it to the next level and, go beyond just being a solopreneur or a solo freelancer and stuff like that, which is basically where me and Tommy's stories cross paths.
And what was your main motivation for trying to get into that? Were you just like, you wanted to make more money, or you wanted to remove yourself from the daily process of actually fulfilling the work? Like, what was your main objective?
I mean, probably the same thing that motivates most of us, which is making more money in less time. I think if you like any entrepreneur should always be striving to make as much money as in the least amount of time as possible. I think anything else is like, I don't know, just from a philosophical standpoint, wasteful.
Yeah, well,
so yeah,
that's an interesting point though, because like the narrative today, a lot of times I think people get confused. Is like,
oh yeah,
people
got to be Elon Musk and work 100 hours a week.
It's like cool to work way more than you should, but ultimately, I mean, the only way that you generate wealth, the wealthiest people in the world obviously generate the most amount of money per hour, so they have incredible leverage with their time. And
exactly.
A lot of people will actually work much less than 40 hours a week. It's just what they do.
Exactly.
Highly leveraged. And there's definitely wealthy people that still work a lot, and then they have incredible leverage with the amount of time that they put in. But that's a really good point. Okay, cool. So you're motivated by the idea of starting a productized service business. This is when you contacted me and we talked a little bit about how I built Content Pros. You had a similar idea with developing a writing service, you were kind of already selling monthly retainer packages on your own, or
Exactly.
build out a team. What were the biggest hurdles that you faced in terms of trying to build that business over the course of the last year when you were trying to dive into that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing obviously was, the knowledge, having that kind of business blueprint, which I think is the first thing, everyone reaches for, right? When you're trying to get into a new business, you go, okay, is there some kind of framework or blueprint that I can learn from someone, or that I can get in an online course or from a friend or something like that? I've got to try and talk to someone who's doing this already, or learn from someone who's done this already, and kind of get all the pieces together. You got to kind of build that bird's eye map in your head and understand all the, I don't know, for me at least, I try to understand, all the moving parts in the business so I can understand how all of them will go together, right? So, yeah, that's when I reached out to Tommy and was trying to kind of pick his brain and see, how he generated clients, how he managed his team and all that kind of stuff, and kind of understand all the moving parts in that type of business model, because it was all completely new to me. And yeah, once I kind of had that down, it was time to execute and put it into action, I guess. So yeah, basically started. What did I do? The first thing I did was writing up some basic, MVP kind of processes. Nothing too advanced or too specific. I didn't want to waste too much time on it because, I likely would have to change things here and there or iterate a few times once I actually had, freelancers doing the work and actually had them working on live clients. The processes would probably change. So I kind of just got the bare bones done as quickly as I could. And then, yeah, started trying to hire people, which was definitely the biggest struggle for me, was trying to find very good writers or reliable writers. Well, two things. Yeah, finding people who are reliable was definitely one of the biggest challenges, and then finding people who are good writers. So I don't know if maybe I was a bit picky or whatever. Coming as being a copywriter myself, maybe I had high standards or something like that. But yeah, for me it was hard finding people, especially when in the early stages when I was kind of transitioning, because all the clients I currently had, the $10,000 a month I was making were my own clients that I was writing for, and then I was basically swapping out other writers and stuff like that. So that was definitely a challenging process, trying to find other writers who I could sub in and work for my clients that I was already serving. You know what I mean? So maybe that wasn't necessarily the smartest way to do it, but it's certainly an option I felt I had.
No, it's a huge hurdle, and it was a difficult thing for us too. That was like one of the biggest things for us that held us back from scaling the businesses at first. And like, no matter what you're offering, let's say you have a graphic design service or a writing service or whatever it is, like ultimately, like if you're gonna have a team that fulfills the work, you need contractors to do that, and you need to have a good stable of them. So building that bench, for example, of vetted freelancers and figuring out how to categorize like what industry they're good at so that you can match them with the customers that you bring on is a challenge. And like for us, like that became a whole project that we probably spent a year and a half on and hired someone to build out that process for us exclusively. So in the last episode with Danny Carlson, he talks about how he built out a similar system to hire photographers to fulfill some of his work. And we did that for writers. So yeah, man, I'm no stranger to the fact that that's difficult and that's a super significant hurdle. So I'm glad you brought that one up.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, just again, finding people who are talented and reliable is very challenging, especially if you have no experience with it like what I had. I mean, I've always since day one be the kind of do it yourself, do everything yourself kind of guy. So yeah, to kind of, I mean, it was a fun experience and definitely helped me grow in a lot of ways to kind of try, just stretch myself and try and find people. But yeah, it was also extremely challenging as well. So I ended up getting a small team of writers on board just to kind of cover my bases, and they took over my existing client work that I had, and then I basically built out a website as well. Got the entire back-end system going, so I had the processes down. I had a small team already. I started building out the website and then the back-end software. I was using Service Provider Pro. Thanks for Tommy for that referral. Epic software if you guys want to check it out, Service Provider Pro. Yeah, had that all set up and everything like that, and then yeah, integrated my clients into there. my existing clients, and then tried to start going into sales mode and scaling up the agency once I had everything running. And yeah, basically started, previously I was kind of the last, I don't know, 2 years or so I've been freelancing. I've always just been 100% focused on Upwork, unless obviously someone referred me work outside of that, through networking or whatever. But majority of my clients would come through Upwork. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I just wanted to dabble in some extra kind of lead generation channels. I just felt like, maybe Upwork would be enough to keep my plate full as a solo freelancer. But if I'm trying to scale up and support a team and still make profits and, battle the freaking high churn that you have when you first start out.
Hold on real quick. This is a real life
Sure.
with real life things. So I'm gonna let my girlfriend in the door, but I'm gonna keep recording. So sorry to our audience. We'll be right back.
Oh no. I feel like Tommy should win the least professional podcast host of the year award.
All right, cool. So yeah, talk about getting those customers on board and like setting up those recurring subscriptions, and then the challenge that you faced with keeping those people fulfilled, happy, and actually being able to serve that, because you start to build a little bit of a beast here when you get this going.
Yeah. I was honestly surprised how easy it was to get set up. And yeah, by far that was the easiest part of the business, was getting the processes. And I mean, it was a little time consuming to do it yourself. I mean, I probably could outsource it and save myself some time if I was smarter, but just running on my current monkey brain, I was basically doing it all myself. So yeah, I was surprised that it didn't really take long to get the systems and processes in place. So once the software was there, it wasn't really too difficult to kind of integrate it and everything like that. Again, the most challenging part was after this was just fighting churn, keeping my clients happy, and delivering quality work on time. Again, just basic customer service stuff and basic quality control was my biggest challenge overall, to be honest. So yeah, there'd be pretty tough situations sometimes. Like maybe I'd have another writer who I'd vetted. I think over about 6 months, I'd vetted about 100 different writers, and then ended up working with about 5 of them who I thought were actually good. And yeah, at least good in writing, but some of them were a little bit dodgy with reliability and stuff. So yeah, sometimes I might find myself, I would outsource a project to one of my existing clients. Someone else who I thought who was actually a good writer would do it for me, but then I'd be unreliable and just go offline for 3 days straight, and I'd have to write the whole project myself. 12 hours before it was due to get it in or something like that. You know what I mean? So there's a few bad or painful situations there, and things that kind of unreliable people ended up causing issues and stuff that were hard to deal with. And I don't know, I think the main thing I was struggling with was like when you try and scale up in this particular business model, it's like, the kind of the more moving pieces you add or to any kind of business you're running, like the more things that can go wrong, right? So it's kind of like, the way I was thinking of it is like, someone like juggling bowls or spinning plates or something like that, So the more complex your business model gets, the more plates you have to spin and the better you have to be at kind of juggling all those things, right? So, maybe some people have that natural talent where they're really good at juggling and stuff like that, but I don't know, I was struggling a lot with those kind of things to actually manage everything. So, I'd be working on one part of the business and then the other thing would catch fire, and then I kind of keep shifting around and trying to put everything out and stuff like that. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge and something that, it was fun while I was doing it, and definitely a interesting experiment, and taught me a lot of things. But yeah, it was definitely very challenging. So that's kind of where I started to notice where I was struggling a bit, and basically tried to get good writers. So I ended up killing a bunch of the writers that I had, and I think I got it down to like 2 writers that I was working with who are actually fairly reliable.
You probably didn't actually like kill the writers just for like people listening.
Yeah, I didn't kill. Yeah. Yeah, ended up just not talking to them anymore, firing them. And yeah, I take my business that seriously.
Well, no, that's
So yeah, basically,
it's like it's an awesome
I
journey.
go for it.
And like those hurdles that you mentioned are like so relevant. Like the metaphor that I equate it to is like you're on a boat and like it's just like it's got like tons of holes and like every time you
Oh
hit
yeah,
one hole, like there's another hole that comes up and like the boat's constantly
exactly, dude.
like it requires maintenance to constantly like pour water out of the boat, and that's like kind of what running a business is like. And like you have to get comfortable with the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty there. So like when you get to that point, I think that's why a lot of people are like, fuck, this feels horrible, because there's so much uncertainty and we always want to control things. And when you start building a business,
Exactly.
like there's going to be a point where you have to let go and just be okay with the fact that everything is a disaster. um and a lot of times that's just representative of growth and getting to that next level. But you don't always have to get to that next level. So I can remember like various points in the building of my last business where I felt like that, and like it's every time, like it's like as soon as you feel like everything is stable, then something else fucks up and like
Yeah.
you do it all over again.
Yeah.
Crazy. But the challenges that you talked about that I think are really important for people to keep in mind is like it's really difficult to build a team to fulfill the work at the same level that you do. So you really have to pay attention.
Oh yeah.
There's specific ways that you can do that, and I'll talk a lot more about how you can do that in the Productized Me Facebook group. So definitely pay attention for more information on that. Like customers are going to start churning and canceling when you set up a recurring subscription revenue
Oh
service.
yeah. It sucks.
Um, churn rate is going to be much higher than anticipated. So don't just assume that you're going to start charging retainers or recurring subscription fees and that everybody's going to stay on for forever, because a lot like your churn rate a lot of times will be 100% initially, and then it'll go down
Yeah.
over time once you figure out what you're doing a little bit more and hone that in. And then it's really hard to deliver quality work on time when you're managing team members. So it's hard to deliver quality and hard to deliver it on time because you have to set up a whole process to actually do that.
Exactly.
So these are those. I appreciate you bringing those up because those are real hurdles that Zaine faced in trying to build a productized service business model. Now let's talk about real quick. If you could just briefly highlight, like, so we know what your experience was like. Now you're working as a freelancer again, and you have a high income, and your life is a lot less hectic. Can you just talk about like the values that you noticed within yourself that caused you to shift back to that model, and like why you did that?
Sure. So just to kind of finish off my journey, it basically I scaled it up to like 15,000 a month, and within 60 or 90 days after that, my customer service and churn rate was so bad that I literally lost all those clients and was down to zero. So that kind of like honestly, I kind of had like a pretty decent like mental breakdown or whatever burnout at that point. So I was like, I don't know, took 2 or 3 weeks off to kind of recollect myself and think about if this was, I mean, this was 10 months into that kind of experiment that I've been trying to do the prioritized business thing. I mean, I'd been doing it for, I don't know, 6 months before I met Tommy or 4 months before I met Tommy, a decent amount of time. And then basically, yeah, 10 months into it, ended up crashing and burning and thinking about, okay, is this the right business model for me? Is this something that I want to do, or do I want to go back to what I was previously doing and kind of go back to what was working really well for me before? And a few of the things I noticed that I really missed, or I felt kind of not aligned with the agency or productized service business model. The things I liked most about being a high earning freelance copywriter was two things, and these are the things I got most addicted to. One is obviously I really love the creative challenge of just every day kind of being a craftsman and getting better and studying copy and persuasion and psychology, and then applying that and trying to come up with ever more creative written solutions or written media for my clients. So I really like that kind of constant creativity and flow that you get in when you writing day in day out. I kind of like that sort of thing. And the other thing I really love, which is like definitely the most exhilarating for me, is especially when you're a freelancer and stuff like that, and you kind of have a good base of clients and everything like that, and your bills are paid, you can start taking risks and everything. So I really love just being able to, like, every single client, new client that comes to me, I'm charging a different rate. So maybe I get, enough clients to pay the bills at $100 now, and I start going to 150 to 200, that kind of stuff. I just really love that kind of constant challenge and constant growth, and be like, wow, I never thought I'd charge this much. Never thought I'd charge this much, and then constantly stretching yourself. Like every project, you can kind of like take it to a new level and take it to a, earn more for what you're doing every single project and every new client that comes your way. So, once you have your kind of lead source in place, and you've got people, coming to you, and you've got, money coming and stuff like that, it's really fun to kind of constantly stretch yourself. And that's something that I found really addictive. And I don't know, with the productized service business, you're kind of trying to systemize and standardize everything. So you don't really kind of, mess with what you're offering too much, and don't want to mess with your prices constantly. I mean, yes, to some extent you do have to tweak those kind of things, but you're not going to charge one client $1,000 a month and the next one $2,000 or whatever. At least a lot of productized service businesses don't, right? Because you want people to order through your site and stuff like that. So you need to kind of have some amount of stability or standardization to your business model to be able to scale it quicker, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the limitations, or one of the things that I missed about freelancing. And then just went straight back into freelance copywriting. And it's been just the end of my first month back into it, and I've been really enjoying writing again, really enjoying the kind of creativity of this kind of the business model and the service that I offer. And had another 10K a month, or actually I think 12K this month. So crushed it, and super proud, happy that I'm back on my feet doing what I love doing.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, the reason I wanted to have this episode is to briefly highlight some of those things and talk about your journey specifically in trying to build a productized service business, and your journey back to freelance copywriter right now, which is where you're happier. So the biggest brief sort of takeaways, and if I could just summarize this episode real quickly, because I think kind of cutting it off now makes sense. Like the succinctness of this, I think is really important to people. Is there's huge hurdles in terms of building a productized service business. One of the things that Zaine did initially starting out that I think is really beneficial to all listeners to pay attention to is he looked for how to figure out a blueprint starting out. So he actually got in touch with me, and Zaine and I had many one-on-one sessions in which I could actually lay out the pieces of what it took to build the business that I had previously built. He basically tried to mimic that and do it in his own way, with his own little flavor for the service that he was offering. So that was really important, and that's a way to kind of like skip a lot of steps, right? Is like seek someone out, find that blueprint, and then start implementing. He did a tremendous job of getting the systems and a lot of the stuff in place. And the struggles that he went through are struggles that everyone is going to face. So I'm confident that if Zaine wanted to actually stick with it, he could have gotten through these things, but there's similar things that I faced as well. And it's just a pain in the ass to deal with. So you have to decide if you really want to do that. But it's really hard to build a team to fulfill the work at first. Just to recap, customers are going to start churning and canceling. Both of those things happened to me. Both of those were big hurdles that we had to overcome in our last business. And then it's really hard to deliver like the type of quality work that you want to deliver to customers on time when you're managing other team members to do it. So there's a lot of limiting beliefs associated with like all of those things and how to get over them. But there are ways and different steps that you could take to overcome those hurdles and those challenges. So really appreciate you laying that out. But then the last point is, I guess to just re-summarize the whole episode, it's like, it's hard to build a productized service business and scale it to any degree to the point where you're not working in it. If you stick with it long enough, there are ways to get over these challenges. But the big takeaway from this episode is if it's not making you happy and it's not something that you actually want to do, then, do what makes you happy. Zaine was able to identify his values and take a step back and become a freelance copywriter. And I guarantee his personal systems for how he delivers his own work and how he's doing some of his other stuff will be benefited by the business journey that he just went to. But it's not for everybody, and it doesn't have to be. Zaine's pretty happy right now, making 12 to 20K a month doing freelance copywriting. And he has a lot of free time and sanity to do all the other stuff that he wants to do in his life, man. So thank you so much for coming on. Like, those are really important lessons for people.
All right, guys.
It's a big takeaway.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tommy. Great summary. It was a pleasure talking to you guys. Peace out.
All right, man. Thanks again for coming on, Zaine.
No worries.